you, Jodelle, and thank you for having us here this evening. We're really excited to share what's been happening in the schools with the healthy cooking lessons, and so we'll get started. Before we talk about the lessons too much and dive deep into the details, we wanted to really talk about how the program got started. Back 6 years ago when Family Wellness opened, we did healthy cooking lessons at Family Wellness to about 10 kids at a time, and they were so beneficial. The parents said, oh, I see such a difference in my kids. They want to join me for grocery shopping. They want to help pick out healthier options. They make food at home, things like that. So we wanted to put our heads together and see how we could reach more kids at a time instead of just 10 after school. There was a few barriers. There was, it was an after school time. Kids had to be transported to our facility. There was a cost. So we went to, well, let's do an after school program. And we tried after school lessons where we did 30 kids at a time. And things like that. So there were still barriers. We still had a little bit of a minor fee. There was still the time after school that they had to take to participate. And then, so we put our heads together again and we're like, how do we get all kids to benefit from this? So we went ahead and piloted a program, the Healthy Cooking in the Classroom program as it's known today, in the schools. So what we did is, this is a program where we teach hands-on healthy cooking lessons to 4th and 5th graders during the school day at no cost to the students. So 100% of kids get to participate. There's no barriers of transportation or time out of school that's needed. So that's kind of how we got to be. This program's for all 4th and 5th graders in the district. There's 4 lessons, and all of the lessons are held during class. It's in a variety of settings. It could be in the cafeteria, in a classroom, very, very flexible on that. And then, the goals are really to help increase fruit and vegetable intake in students, improve nutrition scores, and then teach those lifelong cooking skills so they can be healthy into the future.
What we'd like to talk about would be the components of the program. And so when we started this, we also needed to build a curriculum, and we wanted to use something familiar to the students. And so that's where you see that MyPlate sort of logo up there, and that's the USDA's, basically you could almost think of it as the replacement to the old pyramid. And the kids are familiar with that logo. It is seen, we've seen it in all of your cafeterias. And it's kind of a staple to be used in health curriculum as far as following nutrition components and what to eat. How do you eat? So taking that, we came up with recipes that coordinate to, there's 5 components on MyPlate, and those components would be your fruits, your vegetables, protein and grains, and then there's a dairy component. Well, so that we could strategize this into 4 lessons, we kind of stay to the plate. And then if you also think about the focus from MyPlate, is that any plate you have, the goal is that you would look at it and draw an imaginary line down the center. Half your plate would have produce on it. That's really what's behind the goal of even that design. So kids are going to get a recipe from the fruit, vegetable, protein, and grains section. And then what we weave into this would be your cooking skills, your life skills. So those are also the pieces that are taught at each lesson. They vary and they build upon each other, lesson to lesson. We're hoping that you see an example of our recipe that's given at the end of the class. We give a take-home recipe for the kids to take to their families. And that's the other thing, is they've made the recipe right there in class. They've tried it, sampled it, eaten it, and then they would go home with the excitement of, I'm going to take this to mom and dad or whomever and make this at home for the rest of my family. Introduce them to the MyPlate icon as well. So it's another way to kind of transfer that information all the way home.
As mentioned at the beginning, this program was piloted last year at 3 schools. This year we're in all of the elementary schools in Fargo School District. We have completed the program in 5 so far in October. We're slated to start another 3 in January, and then we'll finish up all of the lessons by the end of April. And right now it's just going really well, and we'll share some outcomes in just a minute.
This is kind of back to the skills too that come from the lessons. So we're not only just teaching that nutrition component, and I think what I've really found we kind of hone in here is that we miss a component in maybe just as we all have grown up is how to eat. I mean, we learn how to exercise, or we get some of those lessons maybe in PE and gym class, but really just how do I fill my plate? And these are 4th and 5th graders. They're going to be going on to that middle school age. where the plate's going to come a little more and more empty. They aren't going to hand those things out to them anymore. So even giving some of the guidelines, the very basic, drawing that line down your plate and looking for produce and filling your plate with those things, but then how to replicate that at home and how to make sure that they have the skills to replicate that at home. Because back to what Angie spoke about when we started our cooking classes right directly from Family Wellness, we had a lot of children that didn't, know how to open a can. Cutting skills are very important. So as you can see there, we go through all of these skills, layer them at each lesson, even reading a recipe, just so that you know, it's just like directions on any sort of worksheet or things like that that you would get at home. It's important to follow, and you have to do it in a certain order, in a certain way. So we're making sure kids understand even reading recipes. So these are the skills that, on top of tasting, knowing a little bit more about the nutrition components that are gonna make a nice, healthy lifestyle, that's what we promote, is that if you follow this, this is probably a good, healthy lifestyle to just adopt for your life and bring it home to your families too.
We're going to show you a quick 60-second video of some actual footage from the class. You kind of get an idea of how it is in action.
You guys have made a parfait recipe, right? That was our fruit focus. And then you went to vegetables last week, and that was veggies and dip. Today we're going to do a protein. Where am I pointing? Protein recipe right there. Does anyone know what protein does in your body? Yes, because what part of your body is really strong? Your muscles. So the protein is going to feed your...
Dairy also does that.
Exactly. And there's good protein in the dairy too. So today we've got a special salad. Yeah. So that'll go in. You get in, okay? Okay. That'll be your ingredient. And serving in the bowl. You will throw in the bowl too. It's good. You guys are...
See how they all and keep it one like that.
I made burgers.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Mom made homemade salsa.
I can't wait for you guys to try how you did this. It looks fabulous.
Thank you.
So what do you think?
It's good.
It's good, okay. What do you think?
This kind of shows a little bit about how the students react when they're working with each other. It is a lot of a team-based lesson because we group the kids in groups of 8, and those 8 team up to make one recipe for their table. We have some testimonials from our wonderful teachers at Kennedy.
Hi. As you can see, I guess the biggest thing that when you talk to the kids about this program, their big thing is first of all, they get to have a snack, that's what they call it. And they get to really sit down like we would do as a family. And everybody's helping, everybody's doing a part. Doesn't matter your skill level, your academic goals, any of those kind of things, everybody is at that same place. And that's really nice, unless you're a super picky eater. And then everybody gets to know who those people are too. So that's an okay thing sometimes. But many students have told us, we were both part of the pilot program last year and things. So one of the big things that they just continually talk about is that they're more comfortable using a knife. And I thought, I wonder how that's going to sound. But I liked how Mrs. Deneen said they've talked about themselves as being knife experts, because they're more comfortable slicing and chopping and dicing, and they know those 3 terms rather well. And they definitely help out more in the kitchen. Because our program was done in October, we heard lots of stuff at conferences from parents saying, you know what, they're helping in the kitchen. Like, they want to try different things. They're, helping us with the recipes and the grocery shopping and all those things. The other thing they do too is they say now they're looking for recipes and different things for YouTube. At least that's what they tell us. That's what the parents are telling us. So, they can start and stop that whole idea too. So the recipe part is really good. But so a couple just quotes from kids. The one little girl had talked about, I know recipes for veggies now. She said, I used to just wash them off and just eat them raw. She said, but now I know that I can make something with it. and we always have tortillas. She's like, so now I can just add a little, dressing or a little something to it, and it just tastes so much better. And then the other one was the banana pancakes, which were our last one. And they just talk about that now banana pancakes are everybody's favorite. And even the little cousin that comes over on the weekends is like, we need banana pancakes. So it definitely makes a good impact for the kids. And they absolutely love it. They wish they could do it every week, really. So, great.
And then just a couple of things from the teacher's point of view. The program, they come very organized. They supply everything, and it's a little different than a science unit or whatever we're gathering it, but it's wonderful review of those health standards that we don't get to all of the time and all of that. And hearing it from someone different is very worthwhile to students too. They listen to us all day. And they have enough volunteers. You always have 4 or 5 with you, and you can see the teacher is out there too, and it's another way for us to get to know our students a little better as well. So I thought a good way to end is I could tie it in with our opinion writing. Why do you like this, since I was asked to do this? So they have to come up with their reason. So this is just one student's letter. And they just said, the question was it a valuable program for you? Was it worth your time? Yes, I think the cooking classes are worth it because you learn new things about cooking, like the MyPlate, dairy, veggies, fruit, grains, and protein, how to scrape sides of potatoes. They didn't know the peeling, but they knew they were doing it, and potatoes and apples, and how to cut things. Learning new things on what to cook. All the things that you taught us to cook are all healthy for people, and that is good. That is why the cooking classes are worth it. So I think that's a consensus throughout our building, too.
We do some before and after surveys of all the students that participate, and so here are some of the program outcomes self-reported by the students. 91% of them reported feeling more comfortable making healthy food choices. 88% reported feeling more comfortable about the MyPlate information. 91% said they felt more comfortable cooking or helping in the kitchen. 70% reported eating more fruits. 56% reported eating more vegetables. And then that 47% of students made one or more of these recipes at home, which was really awesome because then there's that family engagement piece. All the other siblings in the household also get to experience it. So that's one other piece that we thought was really successful. So in review, it's a fun, hands-on, innovative program. We're very thrilled to be working with the students at the Fargo Public District and really teaching lifelong skills where we see the benefits. And, we have heard from some teachers, maybe from first grade, second grade, third grade, what about us? We have trialed some of the recipes in the third grade, so there's a readiness for the material there. If we wanted to move to first and second grade, we just have to switch up the curriculum a little bit, but it is an opportunity in the future. But we just want to thank you for the partnership, and we love seeing the kids learn new skills and hopefully improve their healthy lifestyles in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from any board members? Linda?
Well, this is amazing. My son went to preschool at Montessori, and one of the first things they had I felt like he was still a toddler do, is learn knife skills, which was terrifying. But it was so great. And starting this at such a young age, I think we assume parents are teaching all these skills. And, I was a bad mom. I didn't teach my kids all those skills. So I'm so happy they're getting this in school and getting that healthy start. So thanks so much. This is fantastic.
I too just want to echo those comments Linda just made, and I have a couple elementary students at Kennedy, and I can attest that all of those things do translate and come home, and they do try things in school that they wouldn't have otherwise tried at home. And I just want to thank Family Wellness for bringing this into our schools, and also thank our teachers for the willingness to open their doors to this partnership.
I'll echo what Jennifer said. I just really thank for the partnership. It was very much they have done the bulk of the work on this and really appreciate that. And as they said, the cost has been so manageable for our district. I think honestly, for all of our 4th and 5th graders to participate in this was less than $3,500. All we pay is some of the food costs. So they've arranged all the volunteers and worked with the schools on the schedule and been a wonderful partner. So thank you very much.
Well, it is a very exciting program, but I must share my own disappointment. I saw this on the agenda and I thought, great, healthy snack tonight. Now I realize it's just a picture of other people having healthy snacks. But thank you very much. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is recognition of our audience. We have several people that have signed up to address the board this evening. Before I call on the first individual, I do have a statement to read on behalf of the board. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and address for the record. We'd also ask that speakers refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee by name. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. The first speaker who had signed up to address the board is Michelle Driscoll, I believe.
Hello, I'm Michelle Driscoll, and I happen to be in finals myself because I went back to school, so I'm not dressed appropriate for all of you, and I wasn't sure that I was even going to make it in time to be able to come. But I have a concern when it comes to school. When I was a kid, which was quite a while ago, so we won't go there, I won't tell you my age unless you really want to know it, my critical thinking was learned in fields. It was learned by playing. It was learned by making mistakes. It was learned by arguing with friends, arguing with family, doing things and not having the fear of the law called on me all the time. This is a concern to me. I feel that kids might be going into school and they might be going, I have to behave because I'm going to get the law called on me. I'm in business management right now for school, and they're telling us that our kids do not know critical thinking anymore. There's a real bad concern out there for it where they want the colleges to teach critical thinking. They want schools to start teaching it again. And to tell you the truth, when I think about my critical thinking, I think, wow, how can you guys teach that? I mean, kudos for you if you can, because I've tried to figure it out, and I have come up with some things with my own child to teach him critical thinking is when he gets into a mess, sometimes I don't help him. I ask him how to get out of it. How do you do this? When he was 2, he critical think I could tell him something, he could critical think right through it. But I throw grandma into the mix, and it's her only grandchild, and she thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread. All of a sudden, my child can't critical think anymore. So I had to pull back the reins. But if you're scared, rather how it is in school, if you're scared or you're hungry or you're tired, you're not learning. You're not doing these things that you guys want everybody to do. And I've experienced it myself when I was in school. As a matter of fact, I mean, when I leave this place, you can probably ask Kristie. She went to school with me. And it could be a struggle when you don't have that support system. And I know that there are some times when the law needs to be involved, but doesn't need to be involved on this small level sometimes. I'm really concerned. I just have to stress that. And that's really all I have to say, because the rest is, you guys can think it. You can critical think it. So, but my son is with me, and he would like to come up because part of why I'm here today is because what happened to him. It is in Dr. Gross's hands right now, but my son wanted to take the opportunity with the board being here tonight and it being a meeting. It was almost like why is this all happening right when a board meeting's happening? And he would at least like to let you guys have what he wrote about how he would like to appeal this. And I don't know if he wants to say anything or not.
Are you Michael? Yes. Okay. You are the next person on my list. Thank you, Michelle.
How does he pass it out? just let it go ahead
You
and,
can hand it right over to Brittany, and she'll pass it around for you.
okay. He's putting this on me, and he's probably a little nervous because I don't have him do this very often, even though I have brought him up to the Senate and the House and watched him when I've changed laws. And I'm hoping that one day he will get used to it, but he came to me and said, Mom, he goes, I need to be in school. I don't need to be suspended. He goes, my grades are slipping. And he said, I need to have that interaction with the teacher to be able to ask them questions, which he did explain what happened. And there is something that I didn't know until earlier today, that there is can be an in-house suspension too or something. I just don't think, and neither does Michael think, that sometimes punishments fit the crime. I don't really like using those words, but I don't know what else to use because I wasn't supposed to be the one speaking. So, and that's all I think, unless you want me to add anything else. That's it then. Thanks.
The next person signed up to address the board is Jenny Brazil, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing a name here.
That's fine, just don't forget to call me for dinner, whatever way. I would like to speak about in reference to a situation that occurred last Friday at Davies. And as with Michelle, my major concern is that the punishment fit the crime. It seems that in the particular situation, the school did not have any signage about not approaching or not going where the student had gone. The only thing that was there is that you can't take any food there. There wasn't anything that said there was danger. There was nothing that said, stop, don't go here. And so when of course, the encroachment took place, the door was unlocked as well, and which further shows that, gee, it's okay to go. I mean, when you're a junior high student, they're learning, they're exploring, and sometimes they do go a little bit too far, but there again, the consequence, certainly there should be consequence, but a school consequence should be more appropriate, or would be more appropriate, than taking it right straight to law enforcement. And the parents who can't be here because their son is in Salt Lake City, he had an operation and they have to be with him. But that is the major concern, is that the consequence fit what they had done, the occurrence. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to address the board is Lisa Livingston.
Hello, my name is Lisa Livingston. I don't really have anything planned or prepared. I was approached by a couple other parents in regards to the article that was recently in the newspaper. I am here on behalf for support to kind of show that there is a pattern of what our concerns are about. I don't know, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of limited in what I can say but I think we all know the article that was in the paper regarding an elementary school. It was very traumatizing for my son last year. He had a medical condition, and he was pretty much humiliated in the classroom because his medical condition was not being followed in his 504 plan that I had developed with the school. And without going into a big old long spiel here, I didn't recognize my son because of all the trauma that he had endured last year. He is now in a new school, and he is a completely different, he's my son that I recognize. Yes, that's all I just wanted to say.
Thank you. The next person signed up is Kristie Axness.
Hi, I'm Kristie Axness, and I live in the Lewis and Clark Elementary School District. I would like to address the school board tonight regarding my daughter's experience with her third grade teacher that occurred during the 2013-14 school year. I've recently learned that other students have also experienced similar issues with this individual in the years since. My daughter, who was 8 at the time, was undergoing treatment for a medical condition, so she was absent a lot during the school year that year. My husband and I view our relationships with our children's teachers as a team approach. So I shared my daughter's medical condition and solutions with the teacher so we could be on the same page and help her heal as quickly as possible. In return, a letter was prepared by this teacher which shared my daughter's detailed medical condition. This letter, which I can only assume was distributed on Fargo Public School letterhead, was then sent home to all the parents of my child's classmates. My husband and I were not consulted about this letter, nor did I receive the letter. I only became aware of this letter months later while confiding in a classmate's mother. And she stated that she knew about this condition from the letter that was sent home with her son. I was stunned. The next interaction I'd like to share with you is the excessive homework that this teacher assigned. Now, I'm not here as a mom who doesn't want to help her daughter, but this was crazy. While my daughter was in and out of the Children's Hospital in St. Paul that year, you can imagine the level of homework that she had. That being said, I never expected this level in third grade. One evening, she came home with 15 pages of math homework. There were only a few problems on a few of the pages, but if she didn't complete this absurd amount that night, she would be impacted the following day with consequences. This was back when they had the red, yellow, green behavior. On another instance, she was so upset about going back to school the next day, she cried uncontrollably for over an hour because of how the teacher responded to my daughter tattling on someone who was bullying my daughter on the playground. My husband and I are the first to admit our children are not perfect, and we tend to side with teachers until proven otherwise. That being said, my daughter did not deserve these actions. I'm really struggling with this situation because I know this teacher from years ago, and I don't want to see anyone lose their job. However, I believe our children deserve better. This situation has gone on for too many years, and it needs to be stopped. I plead with you to request your administration to take a different plan of action than the one that has been decided. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last person signed up to address us this evening is Alexandra Matthews.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Matthews. I live in the Lewis and Clark district. I'd like to thank Kristie and Lisa for going before me. And I'd really like to thank you guys for implementing the nutrition program at the schools, which is like the coolest thing I think we've done for elementary kids in quite a while. I think that's wonderful. A lot of things have been going through my head for this past week, and it keeps coming back to the same thing. Why do we hold our students to a bullying code that we don't hold our teachers to? If my daughter had treated children this way, she would have been sent home. They would have intervened years ago. But we have 5 years of complaints and disrespect from one person. And maybe if something had been done 5 years ago, this could have changed and everything would be fine now. But instead, I look at a 15-page report about a teacher and all the things that she has done, specifically to children, and specifically to my child because she was in advanced classes, and she
if she didn't know the answer to a question in front of 23 students, she was told, I can't believe you don't know this, and you're in advanced classes, over and over and over again, until she got 1s and 2s on her report card, and she is a straight A student. And my only thing I want to say is that we can stop this now. This doesn't need to go on. It's well known that the teacher is now in the middle school with the children that she's done this to for the last 5 years. And I think it's, and the least thing that we can say is that they're scared. They were scared of her then, and they're scared of her now, and she has just been put right back in there with those kids. And if nothing else gets done, first of all, we'd like to have moved away from our kids, and I really hope that we can see the pattern here, that this is not a single teacher issue, that this is an issue with the way we have investigated these complaints over the last 5 years. Our principal and HR director know all about it, and when you make a phone call and they say, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about, that's not really something you want to hear from the head of HR for Fargo Public Schools. You know, like, oh, you know her, you have a booklet on her, then why is my child in there with her? And now is the time that we can change it. So next year, we don't have to be back here with a whole new group of kids and a whole new group of parents. And I think it's safe to say that all of our children are doing a lot better now. And we're working with them. And I know my daughter is doing wonderful. And she was within about a week of moving classes. And the other issue was that we couldn't move her classes either. That's a policy at Fargo Public Schools, is that they can't do that. And I think that that could probably be looked at as well. The fact that if a student and teacher aren't getting along because I don't get along with everybody, and I choose to create distance with people who I have personality differences with, why are we forcing students and teachers who are clearly not getting along to remain together for 9 months and just kind of create havoc for everybody around them? Anyway, thank you for listening to us and hopefully making change happen and possible for our kids. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes the people that have signed up to address the audience. I want to thank you all for coming out and sharing your concerns and thoughts with us. Moving on, we'll go to staff reports and go to Laura first at the FEA table.
I brought with me tonight James Erlacher, who teaches world language at Discovery Middle School. He's on the executive board as well. Wave at the nice people. Okay. He still thinks I'm the boss. So I'm going to give you a little update. 2 meetings ago, I said, oh my gosh, we have all this stuff going on. I've got some numbers for you. By the end of this week, Fargo Schools employees, FEA members, will have rung the Salvation Bell, Army Bell 32 hours. We raised over $2,800 during Jean's Week that will go to the 98.7 Christmas Wish. And I'm still counting. I brought over 2 very big boxes today from the district office. We have over 3,700 books we gathered in the book drive, which is more than the Jeremiah program has room for in their library. So any ideas you have about who else we should donate books to, let us know. So good things there.
Put YouthWorks on your list for some books. Report comes from Dr. Gross, a little ESSA update.
Well, thank you very much. On October 24th at that board meeting, I shared with you an update on the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the new law that replaces the old federal No Child Left Behind law. And at that meeting, I said as new things come forward, I would just share with you some of those updates. So tonight, what I'd like to do is just draw your attention to actually the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction website. And the reason I do that is as people go to that website, near the bottom, there is a new link that's just labeled Dashboard. Part of the Every Student Succeeds Act states that every state around the nation must provide a way for the community, if it's parents, community members, and staff to have information about their school and their school districts readily available to them. The Department of Public Instruction, about a week and a half ago, on November 30th, just made this dashboard live, and I just wanted to share that to your attention. This is the first phase of a 4-phase plan that the department has, where this first phase is really just replacing what was there in the past. In the past, the department has put out what they called their school profile or their state report card. This is the electronic version of that. In the next few months, additional data will be added to this dashboard, and then finally, by February of 2018, that's when all of the accountability data will be there as well. But it will all be on this same site. So any member of our community can go to this website, click on the dashboard, and once you are there, near the bottom, it just asks for you to search for your school or your school district. So if I just look for Fargo, I'm going to get both ours and West Fargo, but if I click then on the Fargo Public Schools, the front page just gives us some basic information from the number of schools we have in the district to our enrollment. Now this is data from 2016-17. So this is not current data, this is last year's data. As the next phase rollout comes to be, more current data will be added to this dashboard. But from there, anyone can click over on the left-hand side to get information about the report card. This is now the electronic version of what was there in the past as a PDF. So people are able to see, for example, the number of students we have, their backgrounds that are listed. You'll also see information on the graduation rate in the Fargo Public Schools, a snapshot comparison between our students' performance on English language arts assessments and math assessments compared to the state. And you can see that on those 2 different bar graphs. A little bit about participation in the state assessment, and then the education level of our teachers. So that part of this report really isn't interactive, but it did replace that PDF that was there in the past. The interactive part of this dashboard comes when an individual might click on, for example, the academic performance component. And then there are 3 different reports that are available, one on graduation, one on participation rate, and one on student achievement. So similar to what was on that splash screen or the beginning. But if I go into graduation rate, I will see the Fargo Public Schools, which is in the gray, compared to the state of North Dakota when it comes to graduation rate and over the past 4 years. But if I click on the demographic link that's available, and this is similar on every page that's on this dashboard, now the data looks more like what we have on the Fargo Public Schools dashboard when it comes to our strategic plan, where individuals can come in and turn on or off different data points and then really zero in on the information that they are most interested in. This is available for our district, for the schools within the Fargo Public Schools, and all the other districts across the state. So individuals can go in and look at that when it comes to graduation rate. The same then would be there when it comes to participation rate. On the state assessment, there is our participation rate, and you can see last year we had 97% of our students participate in the state assessment. And I'm not going to take the time, but I could also click on demographics and do the same thing, where I could then see participation rate of all the different groups within the Fargo Public Schools. But it's available for anyone to see. And then when I can get to the last piece on academic performance, it's student achievement. And what this will do, again, last year's data, will give you a comparison now between the state of North Dakota and the Fargo Public Schools in the 4 different categories that the student data is put into, from the novice to partially proficient to proficient and advanced. So if an individual wanted to compare the Fargo Public Schools data to the state data, you can see the difference between our data and, for example, the percent of students who are in the advanced category compared to that of the state. The same data then is available in mathematics and when we look at our science assessment that's given across the state. like the other pages, there is a way to click on demographics. And now what you will see is that same data that's broken down into all of the different ethnic categories. So an individual could look at that. Or, to make this as interactive as possible, if an individual would click on the Choose Demographics link, they are able to turn on or off the different data sets that they would like to see. So they could add years, look at only particular race, and so on. Again, that is available. Once I would click those, I would just click the update. And then finally, the last two pieces of this dashboard center around students. This is more enrollment data, attendance, and dropout. And just like the academic performance, you'll first get the general four-year trend data around that, and then the ability to click in on the demographics so individuals can, just like in the other reports, begin to turn on or off the different components so they can zero in on the information they want. And lastly, staff data, which is available, is more of a static set of data that just looks at the number of administrators, number of teachers, and so on across the district. So just wanted to continue the updates that I provide for you around the Every Student Succeeds Act. This being the first step of a four-step process to get this dashboard up and running across the state of North Dakota.
Anybody got any questions for Dr. Gross?
Just
Go ahead, Dinah.
Did we design this, or did they do this on their own?
Um,
I'm teasing.
This was actually designed by a group. A lot of input was by the ESSA Planning Committee. I do have to say that I did share our Fargo Public Schools Strategic Plan Dashboard with the group, and you will see some similarities there.
To share. That gets us through our staff reports for this evening, and we're on to our consent agenda. And I would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda with the HR addendum as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying yes. Yes. Any opposed, signify by saying no. Motion carries. Gets us to our first business item of the evening, which is an update on some things regarding our superintendent search. Anne Marie, do you want to address the board on this?
I certainly can, if you'd like me to.
Yep.
I'll direct you over to memo number 64 that was provided to you guys today. There is a copy of it at your places tonight as well. The superintendent search ad hoc committee met on December 4th and again yesterday, December 11th, to begin the preparations for the search, as you are aware from our last board meeting. During the meetings, the committee reviewed the last search that occurred in 2012. It reviewed the current superintendent job description. The committee talked about Century Code in regard to the confidentiality finalists have, or the candidates have until the finalist positions are announced. And then the committee dug in and talked about a few things that have been presented to you tonight for consideration and discussion. The committee did talk about the qualities and characteristics that you would want to share with candidates that you are looking for in the next superintendent. Those were presented to the committee from Brittany with some updates from the last search. Those were reviewed, those were sent out to board members, and board members were allowed to provide input. Those were then updated again, and the committee looked at those again yesterday. And those are there for you in the memo for consideration. Additionally, the committee reviewed a salary to put forth for advertisements for the position, which again is there for your consideration today. Also, the committee discussed the requirements of the position and what you guys wanted to put as a threshold for candidates to come forward. I turn it over to Brittany now, if that's okay, just to talk about the differences between something that's preferred or required for a position, so that all board members are aware of that.
Sure. Thank you, Anne Marie. Really what we want to be aware of is the update to the North Dakota Century Code regarding veterans preference, and if we are going to use a competitive personnel system to screen our applicants, which we will and we will want to do. We do need to be aware that when we're listing our criteria, if it's listed as a minimum, meaning it is absolutely necessary, it must be there, or we cannot consider an applicant, we can list it that way. If it's listed as preferred, it's okay if they do not have it. We can still consider them, but we are able to rank that as a very highly scored piece so that if it is something we absolutely want to make of utmost importance, we have the ability to do so, but we wouldn't limit ourselves if somebody was on their way and maybe just had to defend. It gives us a little bit more flexibility. The way we will need to screen will require a 100-point system in which 5 points are set aside for veterans and then an additional 5 points for disabled veterans. So we just need to ensure that we have it listed appropriately.
Thanks, Brittany. So that is why the recommendation for a requirement of the position for a doctorate is listed the way it is at this time. It was the committee's consensus to forward to you that it would be, a doctorate would be preferred, not required. As Brittany has explained, if you required it, then you could not consider any applicant that at this time would not have it, even if they were at the point where they were really close but just not had, went through that whole dissertation process. So those recommendations are before you tonight. Additionally, as you know, we requested proposals for consideration to hire a search firm. We received 3 proposals, one from School Exec Connect, one from Ray & Associates, and one from McPherson and Jacobson. Just for your awareness, the search in Grand Forks for their superintendent, they are utilizing the firm of School Exec Connect. So those 3 are before you as well as they were provided to you additionally. So if there's any questions for me, for Brittany, or the committee, I'm sure we could answer those. And if not, I'd turn it back over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Anne Marie. So just to kind of give you a roadmap of what we're going to do with this business item tonight, or maybe do or not do, because obviously the board will desire to share whatever direction you want us to take. There are really 4 things that I, at least as your chair, would like to see us discuss, possibly take action on tonight. The first 3 really involve memo number 64, determining if the $210,000 minimum salary range is agreeable to the rest of the board, determining if the recommended requirements for the position and the preferred requirements are acceptable to the board, and then on the back of this page, the qualities and characteristics. The reason for these decisions at this point in time is, assuming we solidify this as a board tonight, then the 4th decision we're going to have a discussion on, possible action, is the selection of a search firm. If we know this data going in and we do select a search firm, we can immediately start the search firm to put the materials together to begin to put the advertisements out on the position and get us out into the marketplace of potential candidates. I'd give you one overview, or I guess a couple, because I want to take these recommendations first and then we'll come back to the search firm. We looked as a committee at the salaries of all of comparable districts in our region, West Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck. I think we looked at Moorhead as well, and of course we looked at Dr. Schatz's compensation currently. And from our perspective, we are by no means the highest paid district currently. There are districts that I just referenced that their total payroll package is greater than the $210,000. But from the committee's perspective, and that's why it's put in here that the minimum salary would be $210,000, possibly more depending upon the qualifications, and that would be something when and if we find a candidate that we'd like to extend an offer to. Will then be a formal negotiation between some of the board, if not all of the board, and that candidate. So it was the committee's thought that if we're going to get serious about trying to attract the quality of level people that we want, knowing that we're already competing in our own neighborhood with districts, but also competing with all of Minnesota, actually all of the country when it comes right down to it, but certainly in the upper Midwest, the larger school districts, Most are well into that 200,000 range. So that's why the committee came back with that recommendation. So I'd like to discuss that one, take action on that, and go on to each of these separately. Dinah?
Do you want a motion so we can discuss?
Sure.
Okay. I'll move that we approve a salary range for the position of superintendent to be included in all advertisements as the following. The Fargo School Board is prepared to offer a competitive salary and comprehensive benefit package, including an expense allowance. The minimum salary will be $210,000. However, the final salary for the successful candidate will be negotiated and determined based upon proven experience and qualifications.
Second.
Discussion. Jennifer?
So when I look at this and I look at the current salary that we're paying Dr. Schatz and the fact that he has a doctorate, when I read this, if we were to consider a candidate that has, or that does not have one, we couldn't effectively then negotiate a lower salary.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. The word minimum is in there, but if you don't meet all of our criteria and we're still willing to take a shot on you, that would be a negotiable item that we could then say, you really aren't on target to have a doctoral degree. That was a preferred qualification. We might be interested, but we're not willing to pay at that. Brittany?
If we're wanting to go lower than that, we would want to use different language. We would want to say a base salary in the range of, if we want to have the flexibility to go below that.
Okay. Do you think we legally have to do that, or do you just think that's a nice thing to do?
I think it's an important thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts, discussion? No. David?
I share Jennifer's concerns, and I've always wondered why, when a search is conducted, that we begin the search at a salary above the current salary that we have. Dr. Schatz has extensive experience. He's done a very, very good job. We don't have a clue as to the amount of experience that we may be looking at with our potential candidates. And I would be much more comfortable with a range that allowed us more discretion than simply saying a minimum salary of $210,000.
Just to be clear, that is Dr. Schatz's current salary level with his performance compensation.
Well, and another point to that too, as you may recall, that in the last 2 years, Dr. Schatz has not taken an increase in salary. And so if we factored that piece into it, then we would be higher than that. And that's a different conversation as to why and whatever. And but going forward, we need to be offering at least what we would be paying him if he hadn't. And we're not even there yet. So there was something else.
And you can amend a motion, by the way. And I think Brittany even gave you some amendable language.
Sorry, Jim.
Kristie?
I think it's important, taking note of Brittany and having it, and Jennifer's comments, if they don't have that doctoral degree, because Dr. Schatz has brought tremendous experience to our district, to be able to have the flexibility if they're not even in their doctoral program.
Dinah?
I understand that we want to be flexible, and the possibility of hiring someone who maybe isn't even in their doctoral program, or perhaps some of you feel that way. But the last 4 superintendents in the Fargo Public Schools have all been doctors. We encourage all of our staff to upgrade their education. We have an enormous number of highly educated, higher level educators in our school district. And so certainly the committee's, correct me if I'm wrong, feeling was that that really is the direction that we should be going in. And the reason preferred is there versus required is, to Brittany's point, that allows us to interview someone who may be on the path to getting their doctorate but hasn't perhaps done their dissertation, or is in the path but not necessarily finished it. So as one board member, I'm comfortable with the way this is written based on what I think is important for our district.
Again, just to be clear, right now, I want us to focus in on this salary piece. We're going to come back to the preferred qualification piece in a moment. Any other thoughts, discussions, motions anybody wants to make? John?
I'm going to trust that the committee's done its homework on this number. We're a large, complex district. We have tough requirements. And my gut is that this is probably a fair starting number to be working with, even though it's a lot of money. I would like you, Brittany, to repeat what you had said about the minimum salary and perhaps the language you had used.
I said you could state it as the base salary will be in the range of $210,000. And that would allow you more flexibility if you needed to go below that. And obviously, we still have the flexibility to go above if there is a desire to do so.
John?
Mr. President, I'd like to move to make an amendment to strike minimum salary and replace, minimum salary will be, replace it with the base salary will be in the range of $210,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the roll, please, Anne Marie.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
No.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Johnson.
Motion carries. That gets us to an amended piece of language, and we still need to either discuss it further or take action to actually approve it, which would require, well, actually, we have a motion in front of us for the main motion already. Any further discussion on this piece? Okay, seeing none, the language that we'd be voting on just changes the second sentence to the base salary will be in the range of $210,000, and then it continues on as is written in the memo. Please call the roll, Anne Marie.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Goldberg,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. So the second topic that we need to discuss, potentially take action on, are the requirements for the position. Clearly, to hold this job, you have to be qualified and ultimately obtain a superintendent certification in North Dakota. Clearly, most out-of-state candidates won't hold that at the time they're applying, but they must be eligible to be credentialed, or they can't serve as our superintendent. As had been indicated in the opening remarks by Anne Marie and Brittany, and I think also referenced by Dinah, the committee is, I think, strongly in favor of having somebody end up replacing Dr. Schatz that has a doctoral degree in education. But we recognize that there could be somebody that is a shining star in the administrative ranks that just presented their dissertation and it hasn't been signed off yet. So they may well be a doctor by the time they take this job, but they can't officially put that on their resume today. So we talked about, should it be a absolute, or should we use the word preferred? And the reason we went with preferred was to allow us that latitude to look at somebody who otherwise would be the candidate of choice, and that one little component is not completed yet. Now, also share the committee's thought. It doesn't mean it'll become the board's thought. We're not too interested in seeing somebody that had their master's degree 22 years ago, is age 58, and has never started a doctoral program. From the committee's perspective, that's why we want this preferred in there, so it can be weighted in that matrix that Brittany referred to, that we ultimately have to use under state law when we make this hiring decision. So that's how we came about that preferred. Obviously, we prefer prior superintendent experience. That being said, I'm here to tell you that the last 3 superintendents I've worked with did not have prior superintendent experience. They had depth of administrative experience. In Dr. Schatz's case, he had not only at the district level had responsibilities as an administrator in Grand Forks, but clearly was the principal for 2 of the larger high schools in North Dakota, both one in Grand Forks and one in Fargo. Dr. Baresh was an assistant superintendent and principal in the Bismarck school system prior to becoming our superintendent, and Dr. Flowers was an assistant superintendent in Ann Arbor, Michigan prior to becoming ours. So when it says it's preferred, just be aware of the fact we'll probably have a lot of good candidates that quote unquote have not been a superintendent yet, and we'll probably have some that already are. Discussion, motions, open to all.
Jim?
Go ahead, Diana.
I'll make a motion so we can discuss. I recommend, move that we approve the requirements for the position of superintendent to be listed as the successful candidate must have or be qualified to obtain superintendent certification in North Dakota and demonstrated visionary leadership in a school district. A doctorate degree from an accredited university in educational leadership or related field is preferred. Prior experience as a superintendent is preferred.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. John?
Is obtaining superintendent certification in North Dakota a legal requirement at some point in their service?
Yes.
Do we need to put a time limit on that in the requirements?
You know,
need to get it
do you
within a
know what
year
the statute
or-
is, Brittany, on this?
I would believe we need that prior to their starting.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long of a grace period we would need or be able to have. I know when you put in your MISO reporting, it better be there, which is in early September.
I would believe it has to be in place before they can get a paycheck. They can come to work voluntarily while they're working on this if they want to, but
I wouldn't
believe-
want to start the school year or their
Yeah,
contract
I don't believe
without
they
it.
can be paid as a superintendent without having that certification.
Do we need to amend this to add some sort of language into there? Or are we going to understand that ourselves, that we're not going to select anybody who isn't obviously ready to get this before their first day of work?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't select anybody that couldn't qualify. So no, it says must have, so it's pretty clear. You must have this. Dinah?
I don't think anyone who would be applying for this job from out of state that doesn't already have credentials in North Dakota would be unaware of the fact that they had to have the credentials for the state. So I think that the fact that we say must, either they have the educational background that would allow them to get a license in North Dakota, or they're going to be able to say in 2 weeks, I'm going to be able, whatever it is that I'm missing, I'm going to be able to do. I think that's just common amongst.
Could we perhaps, we say must have, but we say or be qualified to get. So could we say prior to, could we put a timeline on that, just to meet any maybe legal sort of loopholes or legal requirements?
again, it is a legal requirement.
Right.
And keep in mind, this is advertisement material going out to our prospects. Once we'd hire or make an extension of a hire, which will probably happen late February, early March, the position is not theirs until July 1st. So that will be the process that they then have to do if they accept the position, is they need to go get that certification. So I don't think we need to clarify it at all. In fact, every search firm is going to know that this is a requirement as well. And it's not unique to North Dakota. It is every state in the union has the same rule. With different requirements, but the same rule. Linda?
I was just asking, how long does it take to get a certification if you come from out of state? What's involved in the paperwork?
I don't know for sure how long it takes. Do you, Brittany?
There isn't a set timeline, but when you're coming from out of state, it takes longer because they push North Dakota to the front and then they process the out of state. They have to go through, get the background check run through. Is usually takes the longest, and get all of your transcripts from your different schools officially sent to the state. But I don't think it would be an issue with our time frame. So particularly if they have the credential in another state, it makes it a lot easier.
Further discussion? Emery, will you call the roll, please?
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. The third area is actually the second one on the front page, but it's really on the back. It's our preferred qualifications and characteristics. And again, as Anne Marie pointed out, the committee worked through this. We got some help from Brittany. And then we got some feedback primarily from Jennifer, tweaked it again. And I'll just share a thought here, because we could spend a lot of time trying to wordsmith this page. I'll just say it, nobody that's going to apply for the job is going to really study any of these, because every school district that's hiring a superintendent is going to have the exact same kind of verbiage, more or less. But if somebody has strong feelings that you'd like to have something added or changed, we're certainly in a position to do just that. Dinah?
I move that we approve the preferred qualities and characteristics for the position of superintendent as presented on the memo. I won't read that all for you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Linda?
I would just say that this is a pretty exhaustive list. We put it out early. People had the opportunity to make suggestions, and I'm grateful to those who did. So I'm happy to see that we're bringing this forward.
Any other discussion? Anne Marie, call the roll, please.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Before we go on to tackle the last item tonight on superintendent search, which is the possible selection of a search firm, it took us well past our normal break time, so we'll take a 5-minute stretch break and reconvene. I'd like to call this meeting back into session. Our next order of business under superintendent search is a discussion on search firms. As Anne Marie indicated, there are three. I just want to give you a little background information for those that maybe looked through them but didn't put a snapshot together. We looked at them from a pricing perspective. School Exec Connect's base price was $17,900. Ray and Associates was $18,000, and McPherson and Jacobson base price is $15,900. All of them, in addition to whatever base fee they would charge for expenses, traveling to and from our district, whichever team members they send up here. Obviously, wherever we choose to advertise the position, there's a cost to place those ads. That would be a cost coming back to the district. And then typically, districts pay for the finalists to come in to be interviewed. Mileage, airfare, lodging, food, that type of thing. So from a fee perspective, they're all pretty comparable. And just an FYI, when and if we pick a firm, we'll probably negotiate a little bit of what their base fee is, because most of these packages have things in them, quite frankly, that we've already done some of tonight, or that we may not feel is needed for Fargo, which is exactly what we did last time in our superintendent search. So I would anticipate whoever we chose, we'll probably shrink that number a little bit based upon doing a lot of the upfront work without them having to spend time to come up here and do it. All of them offer, quote unquote, a 24-month guarantee. That means once we've extended an offer to somebody and they have taken it and they start, should they leave either through their thought process or through ours within 24 months, the firm will repeat the process, do the search again, and the only thing we'll have to deal with is their actual expenses, not a fee. A couple other notes of interest. I think Anne Marie indicated School Exec Connect is the firm doing Grand Forks' search. I did ask both Ray and Associates and McPherson Jacobson if we were to select them, would they agree to not take on a superintendent search from our region while they're doing ours? And both of them were agreeable to that. Obviously, we didn't have that conversation with School Exec Connect because they're immersed in one right now in Grand Forks. Two other things I'll just share, and then I'm going to call on Dinah and Linda to share some background checks, because we as a committee started doing some checking up on firms over the last day. School Exec Connect is the newest one of these three firms. Now, that doesn't mean they started yesterday, but they are quite a bit newer in this game than the others. Their focal points have really been Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota as we look through where they've done searches in the past. Ray and Associates, who is the firm we have used for the last three superintendent searches in Fargo, is probably the most used group in North Dakota by mid to larger size school districts. But they really focus a lot in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa. That being said, they also have done things in just about every other state in the union. McPherson and Jacobson, they're actually based out of Omaha. I forgot to share that. School Exec Connect's out of Minnesota. Ray and Associates is out of Iowa. And McPherson Jacobson is out of Omaha, Nebraska. They really are a coast-to-coast firm as well. California, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, and Washington are where they've done the most searches. Certainly Nebraska, most recently in our neighborhood, the closest was Rapid City, South Dakota. They didn't indicate any North Dakota searches in their materials, but when I talked to Dr. Jacobson, who is the owner, CEO of the company, he said over the years they've done about 25 to 30, primarily small to mid-sized districts in North Dakota. And the most recent one, I think, was Northern Cass, just up the road here. We as a committee broke up the groups yesterday. We have our own thought that I'll share in a moment, but I first want to get the feedback that was had. We started reaching out to people. I focused in on contacting McPherson and Jacobson school districts. We had some information that Anne Marie had discovered about some not so great things in terms of searches for Ray and Associates, and actually McPherson and Jacobson as well. So Dinah and Linda kind of took different sides of the Ray and Associates. One was looking at their references, good feedback. One was checking out the problem children. And Linda, I know you stepped up because you heard back from one of yours. So I'll turn it to you first to share what you have discovered.
Thank you. So I followed up with some of the school districts that we discovered online through the media, had some, wrinkles with their process. Reached out to St. Paul, read the articles I could find, and did not hear back from their board chair. I did hear back from the chair of the search in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, which is a smaller district than ours. And in talking with the woman who was the chair and kind of hearing how their process went, who they worked with, it was not one of the principals, Gary Ray, or his son, Ryan Ray. And I don't know if you mentioned, but we already have a commitment that Gary Ray, the principal, will be working with us again. And there seemed to be just not great communication with the person they worked with, who then ended up to be quite ill. So in talking with her and understanding what part of the process kind of went sideways, it doesn't seem like it would be all that applicable to us. So that I would feel comfortable, and certainly since we've worked with Ray 3 times before, I didn't find any issues of great concern.
Yeah, actually, so in their reference material, they have 2 long pages worth of school districts, and we discussed that it was more relevant to call school districts that are more like ours. So I actually made 8 calls and talked to 5 people, 2 in person immediately and 3 who called me back today. And generally, everybody was happy with Ray and Associates. They all had different experiences. They're all comparable districts one way or another to ours. One interesting thing that I heard from multiple individuals unsolicited was that they had unique board dynamics, and that Ray and Associates were very understanding of that and worked really well with the board as a whole and as individuals to understand their concerns and explain things. One individual told me that who their primary contact was, but that they brought in additional individuals within their firm who had specific skill sets to work within their community, so that they were really open to solving problems. Everybody was happy with, pretty much with their timelines. A lot of people talked positively about the interaction with the community piece. A couple of the smaller districts, went through the process we've just been through, and we're very positive about that. And one of the districts who I just talked to today, which was Des Moines, I think, they've used Ray and Associates on multiple occasions as well, and we're very satisfied with the results. So, and in all cases, the candidates, the ones they chose, everybody's happy with. They're either still there or they stayed, the 6 or 7 years, and they replaced them. And one other thing that I think is important to mention, that the quality of the candidates, in all cases, they all mentioned that the quality of the candidates that were put forward were experienced and had the credentials and qualities that were requested by the districts, and were not just from that individual state or region, that were across the country. The boards themselves chose who they were going to interview, but it wasn't just people from the Midwest. There were qualified candidates, and they came in varying numbers depending on the timing and so on, of anywhere from 12 to 15 original candidates. And a couple did mention this new thing that would be new to us, that if you've read through all the proposals, that some of they suggest a video interview first, or the candidates doing a 2-minute independent video that the board could look at as they're discussing, and a couple people mentioned that that was also very helpful in terms of their selection. So long story short, very positive feedback. So I would be comfortable moving ahead with Ray if that's where we go.
As I indicated, I did some checking up on McPherson Jacobson, and they had provided us with 3 selected references, but we also had a laundry list of places they'd done searches for. So I was kind enough, I did contact one of their selected references, which was Grand Island Public Schools, talked to their board president. She was pretty pleased with the process and the hire they've had. Very, very recent placement there. But I figured if that was selected reference, they probably were going to give nothing but glowing reports. So I dug a little deeper. This firm was used most recently in Rapid City when they did their search in 2016. And I actually talked to 2 people down in Rapid City to make sure I was getting balanced perspectives. This was the second time Rapid City had used this firm. The first board member I talked to didn't share that with me, but that may have been due to that person's tenure on the board. The second person probably is my peer, because I think she started on the Rapid City board in 2001, and she was there for the first one. She was not real happy with the first one. She was tickled pink with the second one, and I said, well, what was the difference? And she said, we really just didn't get any outstanding candidates the first time, in her opinion, and I'm going to respect that. But she said we didn't feel it was the firm's fault, so that's why when we had to do it again, we went right back to them. And both her and actually Bonnie and Grand Island both said they'd use this firm again. I also talked to Ottumwa, Iowa, much smaller school district than us, probably about 5,000, a little less than 5,000. Everything went smooth as silk. They're tickled pink with who they got, and they too would use them again. And then I uncovered the fact that I had a family member I could check with, because this firm did the superintendent search for Othello, Washington. I'm sure you've all been there before. It's a huge community out in the state of Washington. And if you're ever there, you could stop at Johnson TV and Repair and meet my Uncle Russ. So, and I have a cousin that teaches in that school district. So I reached out to family in that case and just said, are you aware of what happened? And my uncle said, no, but here, talk to Chris, she'll know, who is my cousin that taught. And she said, yeah, they involved the staff. It was a good process. They're tickled pink with who they hired. So, that was a little different take, because I actually knew the person on the other end of the phone I was talking to. They too, as any of these search firms, if you Google deep enough, you're going to find some negatives. They too have had some blunders along the way, and I looked at those. The most recent one was in Omaha. I'm not really sure I could find fault with what they as a search firm did, because when it came down to the 3 finalists being interviewed by the Omaha board, all 3 finalists took back their application and weren't interested in having the job. One of them was the assistant superintendent in Lincoln, so I don't know what was going on in Omaha or with that particular board, but I don't think you can fault the search firm when the candidates that are being brought in for interview decide not to take the job when it's offered to them. They also had an issue in a different school district on some background information that they didn't think had been vetted well enough by the firm. Now, this was quite a few years ago, 2014, and I looked at who had actually done that search as well. As Linda had alluded to, one of the questions I had for all three of these firms, if they didn't provide it in the packet, is who will be the lead person from your firm if you get this job? School Exec Connect would be appointing a guy by the name of Dr. David Clow. He is a retired superintendent from a fairly small school district in Illinois, but he also spent some time as a superintendent in Minnesota, and he's now retired, but he is not a principal in the firm. Gary Ray would be the lead person if we went with Ray and Associates, and Dr. Thomas Jacobson, who is the owner and CEO of McPherson Jacobson, told me he would be the lead person if in fact we selected them. So one other thought I'll share, and anybody on the committee, Brittany, Anne Marie, Linda, or Dinah, correct me if I say this wrong. It is the committee's thought that we probably do not want to go with the same firm Grand Forks is having, because they're in front of us in this process already. And most likely, not guaranteed, but most likely we'd end up with the leftovers of the Grand Forks search, it would seem to us. So we were inclined to think about going with either Ray and Associates or McPherson Jacobson. That's why we really focused our research checks on those two firms. So with that, I'll throw it open for discussion, motions, or anything else the board would care to do on this topic. Jennifer.
Can I ask you a follow-up question to the experience you shared around Omaha? So what happens when the finalists, in terms of this process and this guarantee, does the firm then start the search over? And
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
so it's included in this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Linda.
It was reminded to me at the outset of our ad hoc committee work that I had voted against Ray and Associates first time around, and I had a hard time remembering why. But, so it was interesting digging into this, I think, and I think I still would be fairly comfortable going either way. The way I saw it, and it's interesting to hear the input from Dinah and Jim, is a big plus for Ray and Associates is they know us so well. A plus for McPherson and Jacobson would be a fresh look. What was interesting is that they included who their local consultants would be in each state, which I thought they didn't really put forward particularly strong folks for North Dakota, which we did not see the same kind of list, excuse me, from Ray and Associates. So unless Dinah or Jim has any stronger recommendations, I guess I would feel fairly confident going forward with either one. So I don't have a motion at this point.
Thank you. So as I looked through some of the services that they offer, there was quite, in-depth information around community and staff engagement, whether that be community forums or meetings or surveys. Are those all things that we intend to utilize, those services from one of these exec firms or not?
Go ahead, Linda.
I would say, just looking back at the last one, and also looking back at all of the public engagement we have done over the last several years, I think in reading through a lot of these and in talking to some of the folks, especially some of the smaller districts, they really rely on search firms to help them get a grasp of who they are, where they are in the process. We've done so much of the work of strategic planning and community engagement and knowing what our qualities and qualifications are, that you could almost take the first, in my mind at least, take the first chunk and just say, whoop, we're already here. So when we did the last go-round, the community engagement and the staff engagement and so forth tends to come when we actually have the finalists that we're engaging. So there was a round of public, a business panel, staff was involved, and then we get input at that finalist level would be my take on it.
Yeah, just to kind of add a little more to that. There are actually three ways these firms, and they all actually are doing the same thing, they just package it a little different. There are three ways that they would help engage the community in this process. One would be if we felt we wanted to do an extensive community survey to have the community tell us what they'd like to see in the next superintendent. I, as one board member, quite frankly, do not think that's a good use of our time right now. Two is to help us develop what questions the different panels would be asking. Because one of the critical components when you start to bring in finalists, or maybe if we did something with semifinalists, which we haven't done in the past, but certainly would be considered as we look through things, you want to make sure if you have administrators as one of your groups, if you have teachers and community members as two other groups, you want to make sure they're asking the same questions of each of the candidates so they can come back and give you good feedback. So the firms will help us work with those different groups. They'll help identify those groups and then work to get the right questions so it's a common, I'll call it an interview. It's really a Q&A session with a room full of people and the candidate. So they certainly help in that process, and they'll help synthesize then the feedback from those community groups. And I would think we'd be using whichever firm to certainly help us in those phases, because I would guess we're certainly going to have community members doing one of the interview sessions, staff, probably more than one set of staff, quite frankly, doing interviews as well as the board. I can't remember last time how many total groups we assembled. Do you remember, Anne Marie?
We had a support staff group, we had a teacher group, we had an administrative group, we had cabinet spend time with the person, a community group, and then the board, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And I would guess it'll be very similar. We try to wear them down before they get to the board, right? Isn't that what happens, Jeff? Did that answer your question, Jennifer?
Yes, it did.
John?
I imagine we have qualified and interested individuals currently working within the district. How does this whole process integrate with those people?
Well, as soon as we pick a firm, anybody interested, obviously it's going to get advertised in the appropriate places in North Dakota itself. It's already pretty well known in North Dakota and probably half of Minnesota. But yeah, they'll go through the same process. Obviously if it's somebody in our own district, they're still going to do the background check that the search firm does. We'll probably look at them and say, we're pretty sure they're going to pass that because we've already done the background check on them too. But to keep it a peer process, really everybody goes through the same set of submission to the firm. The firm does their background check on it. Then we will see everybody that applied. The firm will also come back with who they would recommend we consider as either semifinalists or finalists. But we're going to look at everybody that applies. They're not going to filter it out, but they are going to give us from their perspective who they think our best people are that have applied. So I think it's the right thing to do to have our internal candidates do the exact same process. So it's a level playing field for all. And just so, this question came up and I'd never even thought of it. Candidates do not pay these firms. We pay this firm. So it's not like if you're going through an employment agency here and they place you, that they get a percentage of your check for a year or two. Jeff obviously applied through Ray & Associates, and I don't think he's ever sent Ray & Associates a check that I know of.
No, they haven't sent me one either.
No, they haven't. Jennifer?
Thank you. So I'm curious, why a search firm versus like a headhunter? given the fact that we're not going to be doing a lot of the community engagement, which I would just assume that these fees, a large portion of these fees have something to do with that community engagement portion, or maybe there's a way we can find out, you know, to break it down, this service costs X, this service costs Y. But I'm just sort of curious to why a search firm versus a headhunter.
Well, they are headhunters. They're not different. But let me explain one part of that.
Yeah.
They are headhunters, okay?
But do you know what I mean by?
Yep,
okay.
yep, I do. These headhunters specialize in K-12 education. That's the big difference. And really, their fee doesn't have much to do with coming in to do a community survey, except for that would be the expense. They'd charge you for that extra trip in. Their fee, quite frankly, has to do with having the ability to have a stable of possible candidates to go to when this position opens up. And they do. That's why, as you indicated in one of these, they list all of the consultants, I guess is the term they used, that they have coast to coast. They all have consultants coast to coast. And a lot of times that consultant is somebody they placed 5 years ago. So they may know that George, who is the assistant superintendent in Minot, is really looking for a career change. So that's really what the bulk of their fee is about. The expenses are, they're going to charge us every time they travel here, right? So that's really the role they're playing, is the headhunter hat for that fee, if that makes sense. David.
I guess I'm just kind of questioning why we need to hire a search firm when, in my opinion, we already have a very full stable. You just pointed out that virtually everyone in North Dakota has heard that we're looking for a superintendent. Minnesota, I'm sure all of the Midwestern schools have connected and they're aware, and those who are anxious are certainly going to apply regardless of whether we have a search. I heard yesterday during the ad hoc committee that there are several things that are offered by the search committees that we're not going to use. We're not interested in them setting goals for our superintendent. We're certainly going to do that ourselves. They will set up an evaluation process. We certainly are not going to be using that. We're not using the community engagement portion. I'm finding it very difficult to convince myself that we need to hire a search firm. And I hate to say that because I know how much work the ad hoc committee has already put in. I applaud the many, many hours that you've already spent. But I don't know. I look at all of the districts in the area who have hired superintendents, many of them just with internal candidates, and have been very, very successful. Someone told me that the average time lifespan, if you want to use that term, of superintendents across the nation is 2.5 years. I would hate to get in a position where we had people that were only going to be here a few years. It seems to me, in the experience I have, the people that apply and are chosen internally, they already have connections. They're already very, very familiar with our district, with our goals, our objectives, our culture, our climate, and they stay for many years and just continue to build on the tremendous success that we've seen in the past. I really question that we need to do this.
Rebecca.
So I know that we might have folks within the area that are qualified, but I don't know, and I don't know if any of us know that. We don't have any applicants yet. And so I would say I'm a bit hesitant right now in saying that we don't need to look at a firm. I'd be interested in learning what the process would be if we weren't going to be having a firm, how we would go about that process. I'm also interested in superintendents or individuals that are interested in being superintendents of a school district, if there is value, if the candidates see value or more strength or more, is there a greater interest in, for a candidate, and take the sincerity of applying for a position for a school district that uses a search committee, such as the 3 that we have here. And I also want, right now, I am comfortable with us selecting a search committee. I'm not saying I'm comfortable with selecting which one right now, but with going with that process without learning more. And I also want to say that I do believe that it is beneficial for us and that we ought to be looking at a committee or at a firm that is exclusive to the district. So that would be going along with what Linda says and I guess the conversation that I heard at the meeting yesterday. So removing school execs from the conversation so that we would be focusing on either Ray and Associates or McPherson and Jacobson.
John?
I think, obviously I don't want to waste money, but I think these can get us a wider pool of candidates to look at, and the fees are very reasonable, in my opinion, especially after we start negotiating the prices that are printed in these books. And so I am in favor of using a search firm for us, and I would also strike from my considerations the School Exec Connect, because I think there's a bit of a conflict of interest there with them working in Grand Forks. Given our history with Ray and Associates, I see no reason not to use them again. And so I would make a motion that we select Ray and Associates as our search, executive search firm.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
Jim?
Go ahead, Dana.
I just want to comment on David. If you think that the search committee has put in a lot of hours already to this point, if we didn't have hire an outside search firm, that committee would be doing a whole lot more work, and a lot more work, especially for Anne Marie and Brittany potentially, over and above all the other things that they do on a daily basis. And I think that we really do need an outside firm for the time commitment that it takes to do all of the pieces and coordinate everything. So just 2 cents on that.
Linda, then Jennifer.
I would echo that. I think when we went through the last search, and I come to this from a different world that also does searches, and I think an internal candidate is remarkable when it happens. I think the tendency is generally, if you're doing a national search, I think a local candidate is sometimes at a disadvantage because you don't want to be seen as just being parochial and, hiring your local guy. So what I think really came to the forefront for those of us several years ago was seeing an objective outside professional firm telling us that there was an internal candidate who absolutely measured up to the national candidates. And I think without that perspective, that absolutely kind of sealed it for a lot of us, and I think that was important. And, Anne Marie and Brittany and everybody upstairs will still have plenty to do in bringing all these groups together and doing all the operational work that goes into this, even with a professional search firm. So if we were just to do it on our own, I don't think that would be the best use of anyone's time, and I think we would always be wondering if we really did get the best possible pool of candidates. We have a school district that when we go to national conferences, we're one of the high flyers in the nation. And I think not to do a proper national search would be letting our district down. I would not want to see us go in that direction.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of questions, but my first one is, would there be a way for us to sort of choose or make a motion to choose one of the firms and separate out the money portion, if that's the wishes of the group, is that we have, an executive search firm, but the dollar amount isn't exactly accurate because of the services that we may or may not choose. Can we somehow remove that from, if there is a motion moving forward?
Well, there is a motion
Or-
on the table.
So can we amend that?
But it didn't include a set fee. And yes, whatever firm, assuming there is one, that we approve to go forward with, we are going to negotiate exactly what we want out of their package and what that price tag's going to be.
So
Yes.
just to clarify then, if we support the motion, we're not necessarily saying okay to 18,000 or 15,900. That would be further discussion.
Well, I don't even know that it'll be further discussion, but no, we're not saying yes to that number. And just so everybody's clear, this process is going to cost us over 20,000, easily over 20,000. Because there are going to be people getting plane tickets to Fargo, which is not a cheap place to fly to. And they're not going to be flying here on the weekend. They're going to be coming in during the week, so we can actually have them with our staff and community members. I think last time around, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we spent about 23,000.
I think it was 27,000. It was closer to
Yeah,
around
27,000. We're going to be advertising in national trade journals. Those are not $150 ads. But we are looking for the most important employee in our district. And I'll just share this. First of all, David Flowers would never have been in Fargo, would never have been in West Fargo if it wasn't for a national search being done by the Fargo School District that found a guy in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The last time around, we interviewed a gentleman from Philadelphia, a gal from Colorado. These people didn't even know Fargo existed at the time they got the information provided to them and ended up applying. So I agree with you, David. Local people are going to know this job's open. And there probably are some local people. When I say local, I'm talking within 300 miles of this microphone that might fit our criteria. I think I know most of them by first name, to be real honest. We owe it to our staff and I believe to our students to cast as big a net as we can to get the best person we can in hopes of finding somebody that is comparable to our current superintendent. That's my 2 cents anyway. Rebecca.
So since the motion on the table is for Ray and Associates, this is what the language is on page 13 for their cost breakdown at the beginning, where it talks about the consultant fee. The base fee for the performance of the superintendent search by the consultant as provided in this proposal will be $18,000. If the board selects only certain elements offered in this package or requests services not included in this package, our fees and reimbursed expenses will be adjusted accordingly. So it talks about that the process is flexible and I am comfortable with it. I would support the motion. I believe that the students, the staff, the teachers, administrators of our school district and our taxpayers deserve us to do full due diligence on someone that is going to be taking Dr. Schatz's spot at this district.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Would it be okay for me to ask you what your experience was of working with Ray and Associates, or the administration for that matter?
I had the opportunity to work with Ray and Associates twice. I worked directly with Ray when I applied at the Grand Forks position back when Dr. Nyblad received it. I was the runner-up in that process. I had an excellent experience both times. I really enjoyed working with Ray. The telephone interview that you engage in, if you're selected to be in that first group of interviews, is very well done. If you're selected to be a finalist, of course, it's in their best interest for whoever is selected to be successful. So they give you lots of guidance as far as what the district's looking for, why you're in that final pool. It's not really a preparatory kind of exercise for the interview, but it's making sure that the candidates that they're going to give to you and that you've selected for that final interview are going to be well prepared so that you're going to have good interviews and a good group to select from. So I have nothing but good things to say about Ray and Associates myself and the experience I had as a candidate twice going through that process.
Further discussion? Jennifer?
Okay, I'll try to make this the last thing I say. So I think that this has been great discussion, and I thank you for answering all my questions. And for a variety of reasons, I agree with all of the things that you've said in terms of, whether it is that we're going to do any sort of community surveys, but the panels and the discussion and the interview questions, that is all something that would be very time consuming if we asked our staff to do that. So I thank you for sharing those examples of what things these executive firms can offer us and the value that they do bring. And when I looked at all of them, and just to share some of my thoughts when looking at them, at first I thought, well, Ray and Associates, they know us, right? And their experience in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, they're more regional. However, could McPherson and Jacobson offer a greater reach? Don't know, it's a question I asked. I like that, to hear the good experiences, and I thank you, Dr. Schatz, for sharing it from a candidate's perspective. And I also liked, one of the other differentiators I saw was the video Skype option. I really think that could also help in a variety of ways in terms of time and scheduling and keeping costs down where we can. So those are just some of the differences that I saw that stuck out to me. Of course, I liked McPherson and Jacobson's price better than I liked Ray and Associates, but I hear that's negotiable. So, so as long as we can do that, then I can support that recommendation.
Further discussion? We have a motion on the floor to go forward and contract with Ray and Associates to do our superintendent search. Anne Marie, will you call the roll, please?
Boyd.
Yes.
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson.
No.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. I don't turn it off, it turns itself off. Just so everybody knows, even though we don't have a board meeting again until January, I suspect Anne Marie and I will both be in communication probably with Ray and Associates in the next 24 to 48 hours. And as that discussion starts to unfold with timelines and information we get back from them, including what we're negotiating for the actual fee based upon the services, that's going to get communicated out to the board. So you probably aren't going to have any more superintendent homework till January, but probably is a word that allows presidential prerogative. If we need to get people together to have a time certain decision, be aware of the fact that I'm going to try to avoid that, but it could occur. This gets us to our second business, or third business item, second business item, and that is our long-range facility plan. I'd reference you over to memo number 58. As you all probably remember from our last meeting, we took a look at the possible expansion of the footprint slightly and the refurbishing and some alterations to the interior of Discovery Middle School in hopes of really putting it to a state-of-the-art middle school for 1,100 students. And Dr. Schatz is prepared to answer any questions people may have on the facility. We have Jim Free with us tonight. Planning did look at this from a financial perspective, and Kristie, maybe you could share from Planning's committee what we discovered from the financial feasibility side of, if we decided to go forward, what are the options we have for paying for it?
The planning committee met on December 1st, and we looked at all the different options, and portions that we can do and in what steps and phases. And one of the things is we cannot get all of this done in one construction season. So what we have proposed that would be done is what is shown in blue, which is the new construction. And then any existing remodeling that is touching that new construction. And then the bus loop improvement, which is shown on the second large page. Those would be the first items that would be done in phase one of the construction. And we do have some different options as far as funding. We have the opportunity to use money that we have in the general fund. We have the opportunity to use money that is in the building fund, or we also could put out bonds for those. So we can determine the finance portion of it. That doesn't have to be decided tonight. What we would like to decide is if we want to move forward with this proposal.
Thank you, Kristie. Jeff, anything you want to overview?
Well, I don't think I have anything to add to the conversation that was at planning, but I think that you have a good plan in front of you. I think it meets the guidelines that we set forth originally when we talked about this plan. We talked about first upgrades. What do we need to do to upgrade the facility to get it up to the remodeling that is needed in the facility for any systems and things that might need replacement. We talked about the additional spaces and reconfiguring the entrance to the building, and I think that's been achieved really nicely with the architect's design of that. And then the last thing was to just make sure that we took that full-scale look throughout the building and said, do we want to restructure some of the different areas and do some things differently? And so I think that's represented here. I know that there was some concern about bathrooms and things like that, but those are phases that still have to be completed, and so I think there was a misunderstanding there with that. I mean, anytime you put a picture in the paper, that doesn't tell the full detail of what's going on. And so Jim could even speak to it, but he has spent time schooling me on the fact that those are all things that those code upgrades, those making sure you're within code, those all get taken care of as we continue into the process. So what you're approving today, if you do so, is for us to move forward so that we can get a bid package out and get things in place so that construction could begin right away in the construction season. The materials acquisition and all the things that are required for a project like this. And so that's really where we're at tonight. And any other questions? Of course, I've got Jackie and Jim here that could answer those two if something I can't answer.
Before I start recognizing hands going up, and I certainly will, I just want to reiterate what Jeff just said. If we were to approve moving forward with this project, it doesn't mean we've approved this project. This project will not get approved until we have final bid numbers in front of it and we accept those. Obviously, we have cost estimates from the design architect that's working this project. They're by no means necessarily locked in stone. That's why we have to put out documents for bids and see what come back in. And as Jeff alluded to, and I know Jim Free and his team are going to be looking at a variety of things, especially in phase two, to address any other needs that are still being looked at inside this building. So the action before us today is really to direct our administration to, yes, have the architect provide the final drawings, send this out into the bid world. And just to get a time reference on it, the reason we're looking at it tonight is we believe, when I say we, the architect and our team, believe if we act on this now, most likely the blue part on that map, the real outside footprint changes, could be in place and ready for school to open next fall. Delaying when we decide this, which is also certainly acceptable, because the building is working today. It isn't like it's fallen into the ground. But if we don't take action probably today, we're probably pushing this back too far to get the structural steel in place to actually complete that outside work on the expansion parts in time for the start of next school year. At least that's my impression. Jim, did I say that correctly? Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
You may see some bid packages that are coming in, like foundation, steel, the parking lot, come in before you know the final costs, because some of those things will have to be ordered, like you said. But the whole project, typically we would get the whole number, but this time we may not be able to. We might have to do it in phases coming in to meet that timeline that you talked about.
Thank you, Jim. Questions, discussion? Dinah?
I'll make a motion so we can discuss that we authorize the administration to proceed with the Discovery Middle School new construction and remodel.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and double seconded. Any discussion? And I know we discussed this at our last board meeting. Kristie?
I can just tell you by having an eighth grader in the Discovery School right now, that this is something that would be very much welcomed, especially in the cafeteria area. They're very crowded. Their lunch lines, they can wait up to 15 minutes before getting their lunch. Gives them a very short amount of time to eat. And so some of these things are very needed.
I think overall, this right now seems to have a large price tag on it, but the new additions, I think, are very thoughtfully considered. The remodels, probably overdue, and these buildings are the hearts of our neighborhoods, and they serve generations of our kids, and I think this reflects that and is an investment in our future of our entire community, and so this looks really good to me. Thank you.
And I really like the fact that the new construction that's greatly going to increase the safety of this building can be done quickly. I think it's a very, very well thought out plan.
Seeing no other hands, Anne Marie, would you call the roll, please?
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. Our last business item is the acceptance of EL 7, 8, 9, and 10. I first of all want to thank everybody who was able to get them back in. I duly noted that there were several folks that had comments that will go over to governance for consideration. I think overall, most areas were marked in compliance by all people. So if anybody would care to make a motion. Dinah?
I move that we accept EL 7, EL 8, EL 9, and EL 10 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and double seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll, Anne Marie.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes.
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. I'm going to use a little presidential prerogative here. We are through our business section. We are to our board reports. I want to first of all thank all the board members for doing your fall liaison visits and for submitting your report. We're not going to go over those tonight. You can certainly read them at your leisure, and if you have questions about somebody's, feel free to reach out to them. And I suspect we'll be shortly after the holiday season reminding everybody that we want to do a spring one too. So again, thank you. In deference to both Dinah and Linda, who have some event planned for us this evening, if you have a committee or liaison report that you feel you need to share before we get together in January, I'd ask you to share that. If not, please hold your thoughts until January and we'll get them at that point in time. So Dinah?
Nope. Thank you.
David?
No, thanks.
Kristie?
No, thank you.
John?
Really quickly, I apologize. I had the opportunity to hear the Ben Franklin sixth grade choir last week, And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because there were 120 kids on stage singing. And I told my daughter, who was in the choir, when I graduated high school in Rock Lake, North Dakota, there weren't 120 kids in the entire school, K through 12. And the opportunity to be able to sing with that many kids, it took me having to go to international music camp in the summer. And performing with 100 people is life-changing, and I highly encourage anybody who ever has the opportunity to do it. The coordination it takes and the power of the experience is incredible. And I think those sixth grade kids, I'm sure, took it for granted. And I'm sure a lot of the parents in the crowd are like, okay, it's a winter night, whatever. It's an extraordinary experience that we're giving our kids here, and I just had to share that. Thank you.
Jennifer,
Nothing to report.
Rebecca,
I'll save it for next time.
Linda.
Last night's Fargo Dome Authority reception was very nice. Some of us were there, so grateful that they moved it on our behalf. So otherwise, nothing else.
A copy of your president's report that is provided by the board secretary was provided to you. Oh, I'm sorry, Brandy?
No, I'll save it.
Okay. Copy of the president's report, which is provided to us from Anne Marie's desk, is there for you to read. Please remember, it's never too early to ask for contributions for the summer picnic. And with that, we are officially adjourned.